Hello, friends, and welcome to Thursday's edition of the Kings of Anglia Ipswich Town podcast. And I know immediately what you're thinking, not another one. Yes, friends, another one. This week they're coming at you like London buses. This is the fourth of the week. There will be five by the time we finish. All free content for you to enjoy and consume, and hopefully you are enjoying and consuming it. My name is Mark Heath. I'm your host, and with me, three fellow Kings to talk about something which dropped on Monday evening. Tuesday morning, I think, actually, in reality, Monday evening is when it happened, which was a big interview with Mark Ashton and Kieran McKenna, carried out by Stuart Watson and Andy Warren. I thought we'd give you a little bit of behind-the-scenes look at that today, as well as other things. But first of all, I'll introduce my fellow Kings. We're going to start with you today, Roscoe. How are you? Like, you've had a trim. How's things?
I'm very well, yeah. I've had a fresh trim. I'll quote my girlfriend here. She's saying I looked a bit hairy. My eyebrows were getting hairier. I was getting more hair at the top. My beard was getting a bit bushy, so had to be done. But I feel good.
When you say your eyebrows are getting hairy, what you've had them done as well, have you?
Yeah, got them done. Got the monobrow done.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Do you get the old full Turkish barber sort of thing? You get the old flames and all that sort of business, or
yeah, not really. Like my barber, she puts a nice little hot flannel on my face so I can get all nice and steamed up. Nice little pamper afternoon that was. So yeah, nice fresh trim afterwards as well.
I'm going to the wrong barbers, boys. I don't get a nice hot flannel on my face or any of that sort of business. I get him trimming my ear hair. That's about as good as it gets. Boys, I'm going to come to you now. Hutchie, I'm going to start with you. How are you? What happens when you go to the barber?
He just cuts my hair, same haircut. It's kind of like soap opera pub stage we're at now. I don't have to say anything, just in. He knows what he's doing. Gets it done. Does trim my eyebrows, and then we're out.
He does trim your eyebrows.
Yeah, that's part of it.
I don't get that at all.
No hot towels or anything. It's not that kind of place. But yeah, I always get my eyebrows trimmed because if I don't, they do get a bit long, can come down over the eyes. So
a bit Dennis Healy.
Yeah, they need to be kept on top of.
I'm gonna have to have words with Gareth, my hairdresser. He's never even offered to trim my eyebrows. Stewie, this is obviously not a question that I can really come to you at. But back in the day when you used to have hair, what kind of stuff was happening with you when you went to the hairdressers?
Let's just leave me out of this conversation.
Fair enough, boys. It's tremendous to have you all here this fine Thursday morning. The trees at Heath Towers, you might be able to see behind me, are being affected by Storm Dudley, I believe it's called at the moment. So fingers crossed one doesn't come through the window during this recording. That will make things very interesting indeed. What was certainly very interesting, boys, was that pod which dropped Tuesday morning. Chat with Ashton and McKenna together. It is now the most listened to thing that we've ever done on this channel. Finally, something has knocked off Mick McCarthy storming out of the presser post Barnsley and leaving. That was the previous occupant of that throne. And I thought we'd start ahead of a kind of peek behind the scenes bit with your observations on it, boys. You had a very kind of brief chat in the intro about it on Tuesday, but maybe a bit more in depth now. Stewie, what a couple of days now since you sat down with the guys, what are your kind of main observations and takeaways from that chat?
Thought they worked well together as a duo talking. As Andy and I kind of have our little non-verbal cues when we do these interviews, a little nod, a little understated nod. Yeah, you go next for your next question. There was a similar vibe with Ashton and McKenna. They kind of, it wasn't always Ashton that jumped in first to answer the questions. But McKenna sometimes took things on. They allowed each other both to speak on certain subjects. So I guess my first main takeaway is that they seem to work quite well in tandem as a pair.
Hutchie, you were there with your work husband. What are your main observations as we sit here on Thursday morning? What are you taking away from it?
Well, without going into kind of all the individual subjects, which I'm sure we'll talk about, it is just how important this relationship is. How much stock both of them put in their relationship with each other, and how they're only 2 months into it. So you would hope that at this point you're finding two people that are working pretty well together. They've picked each other. They explained how that happened, and it's just encouraging to see that you've got two people very much on the same page. And without delving too much kind of back into the past. It's pretty clear from a lot of the things that both were saying, particularly Mark Ashton. It just feels like they've found a manager now that fits. If that's, I think that's probably a fair thing to say. I think Kieran McKenna fits with what they're trying to do, and it's pretty apparent to me that fit is much better now than it was in the past.
Before we move on, a small bit of praise for you both. You're both incredibly modest, humble individuals who never take praise or seek attention, much to my chagrin sometimes. So I'm going to say to you now, boys, I thought it was tremendous. It was a brilliant listen, purely from a journalistic point of view, which maybe people who don't do this job maybe not appreciate. Interviewing two people together is really hard. Interviewing two people together when you're one of a two-person interview panel is even harder to keep the kind of questions flowing and the conversation moving. And you both did that really well as asking some difficult questions at times. So superb job, gents. Rightly getting a lot of praise for that. Rossi, as a town fan and someone who wasn't involved in the interview, you obviously listened to it in a different way. What were your main takeaways from it?
It was flames. That is the word I'm going to use. I really did enjoy it. I was little behind the scenes, from me. I was doing it. I was listening to it while I was doing my washing up, and I enjoyed it very much. So, although it was longer, so I had to find something else to do while I was listening to it because I finished my washing up about 10 minutes in. It was a big load, but enough of that. Yeah, it was just great. The dynamic between both of them, Stu and Andy, I think it worked. It flowed so well, and it's just great to get some insight on how McKenna got the job. Of course, Ashton praised McKenna with his IQ. McKenna is a very smart man, and he answered all of these questions fantastically. I think there's only one time when one of them came in before someone else, where McKenna went in and went, "Oh, shall I go?" And he went, Ashton went, "No, you go, my friend. You go first." But no, it was just great, and I know town fans just love these sort of stuff because it's not often we get to hear from the two big boys at the club. I know we get club interviews and we get statements and program interviews, but this was something completely different. And Andy and Stu, hats off to both of you. It was a good job.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's very kind to say. I think we were quite pleased with how it came out. We do put a bit of thought into not the exact wording of every question and how they're going to be ordered, but we come up with a general structure. And yes, you always come away from these things with certain topics that you feel could have been covered. I know people have said you could have delved into the James Norwood situation, the Tyrese Simpson contract situation. Unfortunately, they were ones that we just didn't get a chance to get to within that time. And I think we were keen to use this opportunity with the two of them together to explore themes that were relevant to the two of them, because it's very... there'll be chances to speak to Mark Ashton on his own again. There'll be chances, hopefully, to speak to Kieran McKenna on his own again. But the two of them together, it's quite a rare thing in football to hear manager and CEO talk together like that. So that's why we tried to spend as much time as possible talking about things like recruitment and how much time the CEO will give the manager, those sort of topics. So, yeah, we just tried to prioritise some of the questions, and that was the thought process behind it.
My takeaway from it, and I'm pleased you said that, Rossi, in terms of having to find other things to do so you can carry on listening to it. That was exactly the scenario I find myself in. I was listening to it in the gym, and I'd finished my workout, and I thought, I've still got 20 minutes or so of this left. So I went for a little walk just so I could listen to the rest of it. It was that kind of essential listening. And obviously we've heard from Ashton before, multiple times, actually. Very good of him to speak to us. So we kind of know the deal with Mark Ashton. We know he speaks very well. He's very impressive when kind of articulating his thoughts. But this is the first time we've really had Kieran McKenna in a kind of unscripted environment. I know you have the presses every week, but that's very much kind of a dance, isn't it? Whereas this felt more like an actual proper in-depth chat for the first time. And I was just incredibly impressed with how well he comes across. I mean, clearly super, super intelligent, super switched on. And for me, it felt a bit like a kind of new breed of manager. I know we've had the likes of Cook and Lambert and McCarthy, who are all kind of old school, and there's a kind of way that they play the game, isn't there? Kind of accepted way that managers of that ilk approach things. But with McKenna, I just feel like this is a totally different individual in the way that he speaks about the game, the way he explains things, the time he takes with you to kind of explain those things. There's a term in American sports. You've probably heard this, Hutchie. When someone comes on and kind of changes the game or levels up the game, he's playing chess while the other person's playing checkers, sort of thing. That's genuinely the feeling I get with McKenna in the way that he talks about the game. Is that something that you'd share, Hutchie, having had this chat with him?
Yeah, I don't think that's changed just by having this conversation. If I'm honest, it's just an extension of what we've seen and heard from him already. We've talked about this loads over the last couple of months, just about how thorough he is, and explains things well. He just feels like a man that's very comfortable in his own skin, and is in control of both what he's doing and what he's saying. So yeah, I don't think that side of things sort of necessarily changed my opinion of him. It's just an extension of what I think we've been hearing for a good couple of months. A man that knows what he wants and has a good idea of how he wants to achieve that. Hopefully, it carries on with in kind of the successful manner with which it started.
What I would say is, we're talking a lot about Kieran McKenna, the measured, articulate, high football IQ, logical thinker, and all those things are correct. But we also saw a little bit of a slightly lighter side to Kieran McKenna as well. And I think over time, more of his personality will show. Before we hit record, we're having a laugh about the inflatables at MK Dons. Some of the more questionable ones there. He found that quite amusing. And just at the end, when we finished, we would. It sounds silly to sort of think that this should be some great revelation, but there was a little bit of a two-way chat between sort of asking about our lives and his life, and that sort of stuff. And you don't always get that from managers. I've almost been taken aback recently where he'll come over and remember your name and how are you and things like that. And you go, oh, normally we're these kind of invisible ghosts that are just sort of people who turn up and shove a microphone in front of people. So, if that's the way he's kind of interacting with us, I think that's always a good sign of somebody's kind of man management skills, which gets overlooked. Yes, he's a top class coach, but man management is massive, and I just think society and young people have changed in general, and I think the way that football managers have to handle young players has changed a lot over time. And Kieran McKenna, as someone who's dealt with young players particularly, I just think he's got a better sort of man management set, hopefully, for modern football.
Let's dive in then. We've done the kind of sensible what we've taken away from it. Let's have a proper behind the scenes chat then, boys. And that's where I wanted to start with McKenna. I've joked on here that he's a bit dull, but clearly having spent some time now in his presence, boys, you can put that to bed. The guy has a sense of humour. He has a lighter side, Hutchie, you were telling me when we chatted earlier, just as Stu was alluded to there. Yeah.
He's my kind of person. We've joked about that as well. You think I'm boring, so we get on. So we get on well. But no, it was nice. Yeah, there was I think we probably could safely assume that there was a different side to Kieran McKenna to the one that appears in press conferences and after matches. I think there aren't too many people that kind of give their full self into those kind of scenarios. Some do, and but some don't. He's just a normal guy who orders a takeaway prezzo for his family on Valentine's Day, who enjoys questionable inflatables in away ends at times, and he's a confident guy who I think probably really enjoys the kind of football environment that exists. Just an environment where there's banter, but there's business, and I think he's quite clearly a guy that to be a manager you have to have both sides of that to an extent, and I think he probably has.
I also like the fact that both on and off air, a word he's been using quite a lot is humbling. He used it about the away following at MK Dons. He used it about, I asked him about what the big difference has been in senior management so far, and he sort of said, not any major surprises, because I've done a bit of recruitment at academy level. I've done Man United TV, so the media stuff's not not a great surprise to me, but he just said the humbling nature. Every now and again, you realise, the responsibility of this job and how big a football club this is and how it's resting on my shoulders. And I've just found that really refreshing, that you've got a manager that is, despite the fact he's come from one of, if not the biggest football clubs in the world at a very high level, has come here and it doesn't feel like Ipswich Town is beneath him in any way, shape or form. And I've felt at times with previous managers that there's been a bit of sort of looking down almost on Ipswich. We've had it with Keane and maybe to a certain degree with Mick McCarthy as well. So, excuse me, I really like that side of it as well. And Ipswich had to work really hard to get Kieran McKenna away from Manchester United. It was only Kieran's desire to come to this football club that got this deal done. I think United would have put up a bit of a fight if he'd have had any sort of serious doubt in his mind about it. So, I think ultimately just came away from it just feeling just another layer of optimism about how what was the phrase Ashton used? 2 super oil tankers are finally turning around, hopefully.
A meeting of minds, synergy. Hutchie, for the record, I don't think you're boring at all. That was just for this business we call show. It was for dramatic effect.
The lines blur though, don't they? I don't know where podcasting starts and real life begins. We've done this. What is this? The 4th one of the week?
Yeah.
I know we've not been on all of them, but the lines blur. I don't know where I am.
As Stu once said, I think the end game to this is we just broadcast every second of our lives at some point in the not too distant future. Live stream the 4 Kings, the 5 Kings, counting Bacon. That would be an interesting feed, by the way, Mike Bacon. Take us inside the room then, boys. Paint pictures with your words, because you're in Ashton's office, I assume. And people, I know this seems a bit trivial to you, but people are genuinely interested in this kind of stuff. So has Ashton's office changed again since you were last in there? Is that massive bottle of champagne still there? Has he got the old JD still there? The bottle of JD he likes? Wrong whiskey, by the way. Not really whiskey, Mark. I can advise you if you need advice there. Hutchie, go on. Give us some insight.
I think we're seeing a slow revolution of this office space. First thing to say is that I think the last one we did featured a bird trapped inside.
That's right.
The wall. There was no longer a bird trapped inside the wall. But this time the bottle was still there. The big bottle of champagne was still there, lying down on its side though. I don't know if that's a sign of, because it was meant to be to celebrate promotion, remember? So it's on its side because things are in the balance. Some pictures that were previously not on the wall are now put up on the wall. There's an absolutely massive TV in there.
Nice.
On a nice new cabinet, and it's all looking very swish. Not just his office either, is it, Stu? Like a lot of the office areas up there are very different to when we first. I think when we first went in there, weren't they kind of drilling it all out and fitting the carpet for the very first one? Yeah,
it's just a sign of how much they're trying to change the infrastructure at the club, which was obviously a big topic of conversation again. Ashton, I think, like when we last spoke to him back in sort of August time, it was, there's a lot of work to do to bring the ground and the training ground up to standard, and there was more conversations about that. There was a big whiteboard behind. I was sat directly opposite Kieran McKenna, and behind Kieran was a big whiteboard in Ashton's office that had a list of projects, a very long list of projects that had things like big screen ? And relay pitch and
nice.
Season tickets. Season tickets 2022-23, 23-24. So and on. So you can. This is the sort of the long term thinking that was on show on there. So there's 101 things that they want to do, and it sounds like it's sort of foot to the floor, even in these sort of what you would think are quieter moments away from transfer windows. Then suddenly they're getting stuck into these bigger projects that need to be done. So reminds me of sort of Paul Lambert's shuffle out the door, in which he kept sort of talking in a not particularly articulate way about structures, and it's all wrong, everything's wrong, but didn't really articulate it further than that. But you're now probably starting to see that there was an element of truth to that. Paul just wasn't really able to explain it particularly well. But yeah, hopefully things are starting to happen on that front now.
Has he got anything on the TV? Did we see a glimpse of the data dashboard? No.
There's nothing on there.
What pictures are on the wall? Out of interest, has he got Tam related stuff on the wall or
no? There's I think because of where he's from in the country and his accent, he Peaky Blinders is a. I think that's a I think he's explained previously that's a hangover from Bristol City. At some point, I think they quite liked that he sounded like a Peaky Blinder, so he's got that up. I think it was a gift from Bristol City when he left.
Nice. And in terms of, this is going to sound silly, but what we know, Ashton is super slick. Clearly, he likes his suits and stuff, doesn't he? And he generally does look good. What does K Money rock up to an interview wearing? Is he in a tracksuit? Is he in a suit? What's he wearing?
I'm coveting Kieran McKenna's wardrobe. I actually complimented him on his jacket on the way out and asked where he got it from, and he told me it was a Christmas present from a member of his family, and told me where it was from. So I might go out. It was a nice sort of knee-length grey smart jacket over the top of a royal blue long sleeve jumper. He looked good in blue. So yeah, he looked smart casual. If you're getting that on your invite, that's what Kieran was in for the day. But I liked his jacket from the weekend as well for MK Dons. So yeah,
mate, are you going to turn up? Are you gonna turn up on Saturday dressed just like Kieran McKenna?
I might do.
Blue jumper. That grey coat was nice. Didn't he say it was an Irish brand, the Irish version of Moss Brothers?
Nice.
So Stu's needs a couple of days off to head over to Belfast.
On that note, in terms of lookalikes or similes of Stuart Watson, I note from Monday's show there was talk of inflatable lookalikes of Watson in the ground. Can I say that anyone who rocks up at a game and shares a picture of us to any of our social media accounts with a inflatable lookalike Stuart Watson immediately, and I haven't cleared this with Andy Warren, but I'm sure he'll be happy with it, immediately becomes a friend of the show. You happy with that, Hutchie?
I think I think we should make a new club for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll dish out
some
membership.
Why is it just on me? I mean, I know I'm probably the easiest one to do.
It's not. No, I mean, to be fair, it's not just you. The boys talked about you. Clearly, I guess, as you say, you may be the easiest one to do. But any of the Kings, inflatable versions of immediate friend of the show, extra inflatable wing status, Hutchie, I think. Yeah, okay. In terms of Ashton, I know we've talked about Ashton on camera and during interviews. We've all spoken to him. He's very, very impressive. What's he like before you start rolling? Is he the kind of same sort of individual? Do you always feel like he's kind of switched on in kind of Ashton transmit mode?
No. It just seems a thoroughly nice bloke. At times, there's always he's obviously in his working environment, so he's switched in and logged into Ipswich Town. We're in his office, so it's not like we're in a bar or anything. But he's just a nice guy from what we've seen so far.
Here on the audio that you've heard so far, Mark Ashton is a charmer. Clearly, he's a salesman. It's a big part of his job, and I think he sort of switches into that mode when he's dealing with us. So, yeah, we've seen and heard enough of what Mark Ashton's all about. As you say, it was the Kieran and McKenna dynamic that sort of interested me most. He seemed sort of pretty down to earth sort of guy. He's obviously similar age to us as well, which is closer in age to the players. Yeah, I'm increasingly impressed by Kieran McKenna. He was the type of manager that when Mick McCarthy left, I talked about sort of being the Ipswich Town DNA of giving sort of a manager their first chance, taking an educated risk on somebody, a cerebral manager, somebody who's fit for modern society. And the more and more I see and hear from Kieran McKenna, the more I'm convinced that he is that man. As Andy said, he's probably closer to us in terms of sort of personality wise as well. So hopefully it works going forwards for Ipswich Town and for us in terms of the media dynamic as well.
And just finally, by way of kind of drawing a line under this, because I don't want to spend all day talking about the inside of Mark Ashton's office. When we do these sort of things, sometimes, I mean, right, this has been praised, but sometimes there's an accusation that, oh, they're scripted, they know what they're going to ask. I know when you did the first Marcus Evans interview, Stewie, that was something that was levelled. Oh, of course he knows what he's asking, that kind of stuff. Just want to stress, for the record, we would never, ever agree to do an interview like that. When we do interviews like this, they have no idea what we're going to talk about, and nothing is off limits. They don't say you can't ask about this, they can't ask about that. So I think that's quite important to stress. It's not a PR exercise. It's not like when the club do an interview, I suppose, when they clearly will have an idea of what's going to be talked about. This is very much on you go, boys. Ask us what you want, and we will answer it, which is great. And it's great that they do these sort of things, and hopefully that will continue going forward. Just by way of drawing a line,
I think, sorry to interject. I think in way of fairness, there is a broad conversation like the night before where Marcus Nash, the media officer, would contact us and just say, what's the vibe tomorrow, lads? And we will give a very broad outline of, we just want to talk about where the club's at, where it's going in the future. Maybe we'll talk about recruitment, but it's certainly not question number one will be this, question number two will be that. So even though it's a positive situation at the moment and that we're talking about, I still think there were some questions that were not difficult questions, but certainly ones that required a bit of thought in terms of how long does Kieran McKenna have in the job. And Andy put the Paul Cook quotes about the performance team to the guys as well. So it wasn't all plain sailing, hopefully. So yeah.
You've trampled all over my segue there, Stu, because that's what I was segueing into. The difficult questions that you asked, what did you make of the answers that you got from those?
In terms of the one that Stu asked about how much time Kieran McKenna's got, that's where I kind of got the feeling that I mentioned earlier, just about them having the person in the role that they want to build with now. The more I think, the more you hear about Paul Cook, the more it feels like the fit just wasn't there. But just obviously, Mark Ashton didn't put a number on how long Kieran McKenna's got, but the vibe of that was just we've got our man, we believe in this man, and he will have time to get it right. And that's just where I got that feeling from, just that they've got the man they wanted, and it's kind of a bit more united, and that felt quite positive to hear.
Stewie, same question to you. How did you think they handled difficult questions? And the other thing I thought was kind of staggering is the way they were talking about how much work there is to do, how far the club had been allowed to deteriorate in the past kind of decade or so. We talked about it before. Actually hearing that from the people who are now in charge, it was pretty shocking, isn't it?
I think they've probably uncovered more over time. If you go back to one of the initial chats with Mark Ashton, we was asked about, has it surprised you? I remember asking him, has it surprised you how much this club has been kind of allowed to fall into a state of disrepair? Is it a bigger job than you anticipated? And his initial response to that was, no, we came into this, we did our due diligence, our eyes were wide open, we knew the task here, but that's ramped up now. Back in the summer, it was, the stadium's looking tired and needs a bit of TLC, but now there was a bit, and maybe it's because there's a bit more distance between the takeover and now, and there was maybe a bit of sort of cautious respect for Marcus Evans, who ultimately sort of allowed them to do the deal and wrote off debts, but however months down, the 6-7 months down the line now, really ramped up the language about, the training ground is in a hell of a state and we've got to do X, Y, and Z. So, as Andy said about the time afforded to McKenna, the fact that they were talking a lot about Kieran McKenna buying into the infrastructure. He's as keen. He's not just a manager pushing for new signings. He wants to basically try and get a sort of mini Manchester United setup going here. I want the up-to-date technology. I want all the sports science to be right. And if you're worried about being sacked after a few months, you don't worry about all those sort of things. You just worry about getting your best 11 players on the pitch. So he obviously feels that he's got a bit of an element of job security behind him to be thinking about bigger picture stuff like that.
The training ground's a good example of, I think, a good example of what sounds like it's been allowed to happen at the club, because the training ground used to be held up as sort of a really big example of just how good the club's facilities were. You used to hear, I think when they were opened, they all got opened early 2000s, I think, and it was like highly regarded. Used to hear it all the time from new signings about how good the facilities were. And Mark Ashton said that he's kind of had feedback from various managers that have managed here over the last, it sounds like 8-9 years, something like that. And the feedback is the training ground just doesn't work. And I think he's talking about kind of the flow of people around it, how many people use it, the facilities that are there. They've done a few little bits up there already. They've built some new kind of semi-permanent sort of temporary office space up there, which the performance team is housed in. So there's some new buildings up there that houses that, and the pitches aren't good enough and things like that. But so that's something that was kind of so highly regarded at the club and was a bit of a jewel in the crown at times has been allowed to kind of slip back to now kind of feel not kind of fit for purpose, which is a shame. That's not a good thing to hear, is it? So I'd say that's a pretty good kind of example of kind of highlighting what Mark's trying to say there.
And just by way of finishing this off then, and moving on to Mailbag, we've had a couple of questions in Mailbag about questions that you didn't ask. Stu, you've hinted there at Tyrese and James Norwood. With hindsight now, there always tend to be when you've done an interview of any kind of sort. Are there questions that you think, should have asked that, or that kind of thing?
They're the two sort of probably obvious ones that were on the list of quick fire questions towards the end that we didn't get round to. My fear was the James Norwood situation is quite a complex one to get into, and it felt more like a Mark Ashton question than a Kieran McKenna one, because it was sort of centred around Paul Cook before, and we wanted to try and make things as forward-looking as possible. So it also has the potential to sort of derail the flow of things a little bit as well. We tried to, as we've said, ask a couple that were slightly more difficult as well, but the whole thing couldn't be a sort of complete grilling. Where we're at with Tyrese Simpson and what happened with James Norwood, and if all of a sudden you lose a bit of the flow of things as well. So yeah, of course there's always going to be a couple of things that you could cover, but you can't do it all in an hour. So hopefully we've covered a decent amount of ground.
Yeah. As I say, hopefully these will continue because they're great. I think it benefits the club as well, because having a kind of independent media involvement in terms of asking people questions is always good, being open to scrutiny and being able to speak to fans through us in that way. My computer's just trying to shut itself down. Just derail that, boys. Right then, Mailbag then, boys. Hutchie, do you want to do the honours?
Let's do it together. Everybody, come on, let's go.
Hey!
1, 2, 3. Mailbag. Mailbag.
Well done,
everyone.
I think there may be some kind of delay there on the Wi-Fi somewhere, because that sounded awful.
Doesn't work online,
does not work. Right then. First of all, we had quite a few questions, obviously, about the interview, which I'll add in. I'll sprinkle in. We can't take them all, clearly, but we'll do a mixture of football and non-football. And I'm going to start with you, Ross, because you've been silent over that first period, other than a couple of interjections. So Dave Gort wants to know, and it's a question I'm going to keep coming back to you because it's a question Sam Morsey wants to know as well, Rossi. Is the season still over, dead, done, stick a fork in it? I believe you said that back in December. Town, of course, were well out of it. Now they are within 5 points of the playoffs and one of League One's form sides, Rossi. So is the season still over?
I can't go back, so I'm just going to stick to it because I said it, and I hate going back. So, and we're not going back. I don't want to go back to the past. So, I hope they prove me wrong. But there's other teams who've got games in hand. We've still got to play Portsmouth, Oxford. I can rattle them all out. Wigan, Rotherham. So yeah, sorry, season's dead. But hopefully I'm proven wrong and we'll be going to Wembley. Happy days.
I'd love you to still be saying that on the morning of the playoff final. Season's absolutely dead. Stick a fork in it. Right then, let's take a couple of thoughts about the interview. Kind of loosely related. Ben Moore wants to know if you could interview any manager and player from your time. Stu, I'll come to you on this. Who would it be? You've obviously had the most Ipswich Town managers and players under your belt, as it were.
Again, what people that have been at the club that.
It just says if you could interview any ITFC manager and player from your time. I'm assuming he means who would it be? So who? I guess who is the best then?
Well, in terms of doing a sort of a big sit-down interview, I'd love to sit down with Mick because he's the manager that I've worked with the most. 6 years at the club that I covered every game, every off-field situation all through that period. There's so many things so many untold stories of that time. I'd love to sit down and just reflect with him, for the good times towards the start, how he really felt. Sometimes with the fullness of time, you get a bit more honesty in the full story, how he really sort of worked alongside Evans and those horrible sort of 6 months drawn out sort of exit for him. And the Norwich celebration, all of that sort of stuff. He'd be one I'd like to sit down and do. I have asked, by the way, and I've been given a polite no several times, but maybe one day he'll relent. Yeah,
absolutely. We've got to get Mick on one day. Hutchie, we've talked before about managers you've covered. Clearly, Di Canio, I'm assuming, would be your manager. You'd most like to sit down and interview in full, in depth. Any particular players you've enjoyed chatting to over the years?
Well, from Ipswich perspective, I'd quite like to talk to Paul Hurst again, if I'm honest, and about that whirlwind of a 3-4 months that he was here, and I'm sure he's got some very different reflections on it now, 3 years or so down the line. So that would be interesting. Player wise, I would like to do an in-depth interview with Larson Toure.
Okay, yeah, nice.
And I'd like to do that just to find out a bit more about him, because I think he was a bit of a mythical figure who nobody knew anything about. I thought he was relatively good at football as well, and just I'd like to do something a little bit different with him.
On Paul Hurst, sorry, Karen.
Relatively good at football.
Yep, relatively.
Do you see the corner he took?
Relatively, yeah.
It's all relative, boys. On Paul Hurst, I still obviously it didn't work out for him. He went nuclear far too soon, didn't he? But I still think that it was kind of on the right lines, the way he was thinking and talking.
A lot of the things we're talking about now, is kind of what they tried to do then. But the gear shift was so, it was like trying to ram the car from second gear into fifth straight away, and no wonder the engine blew up. It was a lot of the thought process behind it, the type of managerial appointment, that embracing sports science and technology. That was the big talk at the time, wasn't it? And a lot of it was on the right lines, but it was just too much too soon. It was far too extreme.
I think as well. I think did they have the wrong owner at the club to be? Did the owner really want to do that side of things? Did the owner want to change that much? I would say probably not. I think Paul had to push Marcus Evans very, very hard to upgrade the gym at Playford Road. I think they came in and they found a very under-equipped gym that I think one of them, I can't remember if this was publicly or privately, suggested that like you've got better facilities at like the local Pure Gym or something. If and that's not great, is it, for a kind of professional football environment? That he had to push very, very hard to upgrade that gym a bit, and I feel sure they've upgraded it again since. So maybe they didn't have the right man kind of controlling the purse strings to make that happen. I feel
like Paul Hurst was the compromise option that it went against, and this is pretty clear. If you remember, there was the Evans statement all further down the line, which was the "be careful." He used the fateful phrase "be careful what you wish for" back on the fans, almost like you pushed me into this. It was against my better judgment, but everyone was calling for this younger, modern manager after Mick, and I didn't really want to do it, but I went for him. And I feel like Hurst was the kind of halfway house option. He didn't fully commit to it because he had some Mick McCarthy qualities about him in terms of sort of not just being the frugal Yorkshireman, as he kind of, I spend the money as if it's my own and all that sort of stuff, but also the man management was, you just can't imagine Kieran McKenna calling up Jonas Knudsen and Bart Bielkowski and saying, I know you're just coming back from the World Cup, but you've done nothing for me yet. And, we had the infamous rant after the Exeter game, just a couple of games in. And so although he kind of ticked the younger up and coming manager box, it was he's not in the Kieran McKenna sort of plucked from a Manchester United academy setup type appointment, was he either?
You know what would be great is if we could get, and this is never going to happen, if you get Paul Hurst, Paul Lambert, Paul Cook, and Mick McCarthy just on here, just together, and just let them have a chat, and that would cover what? That would cover a decade of Ipswich Town management.
We got to get Keno in as well, haven't we? Just
he can come in kind of like wrestling style halfway through, like when the
all the lights go down, dong.
And here he comes.
Keno comes walking to the ring doing a Billy Dollar strut. Yeah. Right then, boys. Rossi, another question for you from Maddie Reader, who I know got involved with the Town Her Game 2 stuff, which is tremendous. As we all know, Rossi, good old Ross, like that, Maddie, loves a Jaffa cake. However, is it a cake or a biscuit? Now, for me, the answer is obvious. But Rossi, you are the Jaffa cake connoisseur, the arbiter of all things Jaffa. So what are you saying? Oh God, he's always got some to hand. Unbelievable.
It's always on my desk. It's a cake because a biscuit, you can dunk it in a tea. Jaffa cake, it's just all soggy and it's got cake in its name, so it's sponge cake and all that. So
I think that's the giveaway, that it's actually called a cake.
Yes.
So there you go. We've cleared that up for you, Maddie. Thanks for your question. Right then, boys, this is a good one for you. It's kind of out of the interview, but it's a good question from Mullet. In the chat, Ashton and McKenna alluded to some sort of meeting halfway as the courtship was happening. And Mullet wants to know, which motorway services did Ashton and McKenna rendezvous at? I reckon it was Kiel. Now, clearly, you boys are big noises when it comes to motorway services and rating them, ranking them. You must have been to loads of them. So which one do you reckon it might have been? And which one would you have chosen in terms of what's your favourite?
I mean, Kiel would have been my guess as well.
Yeah,
if I'm honest. Yeah, it's got a few things that you need. I think from memory, I think it will do you a Waitrose.
That's what you want. Ashton needs a Waitrose.
What are the other options? Stafford. We're not really. We don't do a lot of M6. We're very much A1 men, A1 and across, or the A, as I call it. Which gets Andy every time. I don't know why.
Every single time, that really makes me giggle.
It might have been where we had our Christmas do, Andy. Do you remember? That was at Newcastle under Lyme.
The Brewers Fair.
Maybe they went to the Brewers Fair there, where we went for our two-man Christmas do.
I'd love to know exactly where it was, because you can gauge who had to drive further. That means who had to do the most legwork. If you're getting up to Knutsford on the M6, that's McKenna territory, and Ashton's had to go fully in to make this happen. If it's Kiel, that's pretty even, same as Stafford. But if you're getting down, they could have gone to IKEA at Wednesbury near Walsall. That's on the M6 for a meatballs and a little 79p hot dog, which that would have been Ashton territory.
It needs to be higher level, though, doesn't it? It needs to have something. You can't see them sitting in KFC. Certainly, I can't see Ashton sitting in KFC.
It's unlikely.
For a boneless banquet.
They talked about rooms being rapidly booked. So,
Travel Lodge at Kiel. And
do you think it's an actual hotel room? They check in and then just sit. One sits on the bed while the other one sits at the little desk bit.
What's your favourite services, boys? Just out of interest. Where you go, yes, we can stop at so-and-so.
Gloucester.
Eco-Man. Beaconsfield.
Rossi, any update while we're talking about service stations on driving?
It's happening soon, don't worry.
It's been happening soon since God knows when. Right then, where are we? James Houston wants to know, boys, what I think you kind of mentioned this before, but it's an interesting question. What previous Town player would you have liked to play under McKenna, given that he's a coach extraordinaire? This is excluding the obvious of Dazelle and Downs, which I think is what you mentioned on the pod earlier this week. What player do you think? Do you know what under this fantastic new coach, they could really have done something with them?
Do you know who I think would be brilliant under Herman Hreidarsson?
Yeah,
on the left, he'd play the left side of the three centre backs. Now that's a man that loves striding out with the ball a little bit, comfortable on his left foot. He's quite imposing. When he played left back for Ipswich, he's had some decent assists in his time. I think he would. I think he'd fit in that position nicely.
Stewie,
Larson Toure.
Yeah. Yeah, Larson Toure.
what about someone like Owen Garvin? He had skills. He had
Range
skills.
of passing,
Exactly.
possession-based football.
He'd
Rossi,
play
put your hand
the
up.
Lee role, wouldn't he? He's going to take that place.
Rossi,
I've got
what are you
one.
gonna-
I've
go
got
on.
one. Velice Shimulakowski, the Macedonian Gerrard.
Nice.
He was good. I liked him.
Yeah,
he
I like him too.
Yeah,
I
it just didn't happen for him, did it? Really, he never got the consistent. But I quite liked. He had a bit of drive in him. He could do
Yeah.
bit of maybe a bit of what Morsey does. Yeah, I quite liked him. Had a shot on him as well.
Yeah.
Also, Rossi, fantastic pronunciation. Well played. Off the cuff. Right, we'll take one more football question, then we'll do a couple of non-football to finish, because I know people like that. Alex Herbert, he's asked this every single time we put out a mailbag appeal, so let's answer it. He says, it's the end of the season and Town are in League One for another year. McKenna's left, and the Four Kings, 5 you count Bacon, sitting comfortably in Mark Ashton's throne in charge of appointing a new gaffer. The only applicants are our last 6 permanent managers. Who would you appoint? Stewie, you've covered all of those managers.
So you can't have McKenna. It's the previous 6 to McKenna.
I'm assuming
obviously.
so, yeah. So who's that then? That's
Goes
Cook,
back to Keane.
Lambert,
Cook,
Lambert,
Lambert, yeah,
Mick,
Jewel,
Keane.
Keane. God, that's a bit of a rogues gallery, isn't it? When you look at it like that.
I've got an answer.
I know. I'm having all
Go
day
on.
long. Roy Keane, get Roy Keane back. That'd be tremendous.
Can you see it working? Can you see
No.
that being?
No, but it'd be amazing for us. It'd be brilliant. Especially he's got all those extra years of anger now stored up. Roy Keane. He's a bit more media savvy because he's done all the punditry stuff. It'd be brilliant. I'm not sure how he'd get on with you boys at press conferences, but from my point of view, it'd be pay-per-view stuff. So I'm saying Keane. What about you, Stewie?
I think we can comfortably probably put Paul Jewell at the bottom of
Yeah.
this list.
I know who I'm going for.
Go on.
Go on.
Paul Lambert.
What?
Yeah, I'm going for Paul Lambert. He's talked about not having a structure and how
Okay.
how he really suffered for not having any kind of football structure whatsoever. Well, he's got it now. We can press the reset button, go back to the beginning when he was a bit of a charmer, and see how he gets on. And you know what? In terms of the football's not too dissimilar. The attempted football is not too dissimilar. I'd probably go Paul Lambert out of those. I wouldn't be hugely enthusiastic about these applications arriving on my desk, if I'm completely honest. But I'd go for Paul Lambert.
I suppose seriously, if I'm thinking about it, having just said what I've said about Paul Hurst, I would probably say seriously Paul Hurst, given a proper go at it with the players that have now left and the kind of ideas that he kind of had. That might be something.
What about? Could you make an argument for Hurst? Yeah, because he knows the lower league market.
Yeah,
he's would maybe fit into the system a little bit more. He might come back and think I've learned some lessons from last time around. You could make an argument there if you're having to pick one.
It's not great, is it? It's not a great scenario. I hope this isn't what happens in the summer.
I think just listing those again, though, just kind of puts into context kind of what a rogues gallery it has been and in terms of the things that Town have tried.
None of them are currently working in outside of non-league football.
Yeah, which is interesting, isn't it? Right then, let's take a couple of non-footballing questions. I suppose this is kind of footbally questions. Al Gibson says, in the halcyon days of the Robson era to the Burley reign, everyone knew the boots that star players wore and aspired to own. Patrick's like Keegan, Adidas like Marinor, Puma like Maradona. What boots did you guys aspire to wear when brightly covered boots were never a thing? Rossi, you're obviously the youngest by quite a way. Were you playing football in an era where there weren't ridiculously coloured boots on offer?
Total 90s. They were sort of my era in terms of growing up. So there could have been all black if you want, all black and with a bit of white trim on it. So that's probably my go-to because that's Nike. So my Adidas boys, sorry, but all Predators. The Predators back in the day. Once again,
Predators would be the obvious one for me.
Yeah.
Are you all in agreement there, boys?
Yeah, I was a goalkeeper, so I wasn't really a boots man. I was a gloves guy. But yeah, Predators for the boots.
Did you see, by the way, on the subject of Rossi moving away from Adidas, did you see the PSG team picture with Messi, where they had to cover a bit like when Jordan in the '92 Olympics had to cover the Adidas logo on the uniform with the American flags. Obviously, he's a Nike athlete. They had to have someone basically sitting on Messi's foot because he was wearing brand trainers which weren't associated with the brand of PSG, and that's what you can get to in football these days. Stewie, were you a Predators man back in the day when you were kicking?
Well, there was a big scare about Adidas Predators getting injuries, wasn't there? Getting a load of foot injuries, and the new blades and everything. No, they were too flash for me as a centre half. I was strictly a Puma Kings man or an Adidas World Cup. They were my boots on rotation.
Nice. Patrick Palmer, Double P, wants to know, we know Bacon is a published billionaire with an erotic thriller, and now Andy has an epic involving Chambo, Chambers and M just waiting to be put to paper. On that note, actually, and who was it? Thomas Bowles did an excellent Photoshop job of Chambers and Skews imagined. You say you've actually written this. I mean, is this like going to be published at some point? It's an actual thing? It's more than just a side of paper?
There's some elements to it, but it's not. I'm not happy with it. It's to. I was thinking of making it a little like the Archers, but on the podcast.
Nice,
but it's not ready,
I like
it. It's been in storage for a couple of years, so or at least a year anyway. So it might emerge at some point.
I like it. Anyway, Patrick wants to know. We all want to know what are the great life's work of Heath, Ross, and Watson just waiting to burst forth. They always say that every journalist has got a book in them. We know Bacon has one because he's written it. Hutchie has got a detective drama. Rossi, if you were going to write something, what would it be about?
Fun facts.
Fun facts with Ross Halls.
Yeah.
Have you got any?
No, not really. Yeah, be a slow burn.
Do you know a fun fact I learned the other day? The guy who invented the Pringles tube is buried in one.
I'll note that down.
What, a really big one?
No, it's actually his ashes, and then that's interred. But yeah, he's in a Pringles tube. There you go. Fact.
Oh, that's the way you wanted to go.
Also, there used to be a breed of penguin that was 6 foot tall. I'm hitting you with all the facts. Stewie, I've said before, you're going to write a book. You're definitely going to write a book. It's probably going to be the first of many. When you write that book, what's it going to be about?
I'd quite like to do sort of ghostwrite an autobiography for somebody at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd
do mine if you want.
what would that be called, Hutchie?
Don't know. That's up to Stu. You've got my whole life to work with, mate.
I'll come back with you for the title on that.
Eyelashes and calves is what I'd call it. I'm definitely going to write something at some point as well. It's just about finding the time, isn't it, boys? It's quite hard to find the time to sit down and write stuff when all you do all day is sit down and write stuff. Right then, 2 more questions. Where are we? Actually, let's finish with this one because we're getting on with time. Harvey Davis, Hutchie.
Harvey Davis, yep.
Yeah, Harvey Davis.
Yep, Harvey Davis.
Oh,
Rossi, Harvey Davis, Rossi.
Sweetwell Prince, friend of the show, baby.
Friend of the show, exactly. Why are you refusing to give him his official title? Hutchie?
Because
you got beef.
There is no beef whatsoever with Harvey. I just think the world has moved on since the restrictive friend of the show list. We've got so many friends of this wonderful show. I feel like we need to move on from it.
Do we?
Let's make a fan club, a Lee Sharp fan club, fan club member. Harvey Davis, friend of the show, number 3.
Excellent. And this is going to be where Mailbag ends today. He says Heath, Watson, Warren, Halls and Bacon are all out in London celebrating a town playoff win at Wembley. It's going to happen, boys. He wants to know who's paying for the taxi down, who's claiming he'll buy the first drinks after not forking out anything for the taxi, who's first on the dance floor, and who's the first home. Well, I'm saying straight away, claiming you'll buy the first drinks, definitely Rossi. Who's paying for the taxi down? Archant.
Yeah.
But you'll say, I'll get this, lads.
Oh yeah, then I'll claim it back. Absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm saying Archant via Heath then for the taxi, or Heath via Archant, whatever way around. I'm saying Rossi for the first drinks. Who's first on the dance floor?
Bacon.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Be Bacon or Roscoe, I reckon. And then who's the first home? Probably me. I've got to be honest.
Yeah,
I think there might be
you
some...
out in the first place is
yeah.
would
It's
be a
unlikely.
miracle.
Hutchie, you've got thoughts?
I think there'll be some contenders for first home. If I'm honest, I think there are a few pretenders to that crown. Me being one of them.
Yeah, Rossi, we know would stay out all night in London, having scraps
on the streets, eating chicken bones at 3 a.m.
Yeah, and offering anyone out who looks at his phone. You want to nick my phone? I'll have you. Right.
Have it, take it.
There concludes Mailbag for another week, and I'm enjoying this. Thanks, Stu, for bringing this back. It's nostalgic and excellent. Boys, now we have to move on to the final part of the show, which is a look at Burton this weekend. I'm going to come with you, Roscoe, first of all, because you've just recorded a Meet the Oppo. At least you were certainly meant to be doing this morning. We've talked about Town having eventful transfer windows. Burton have just had a very eventful transfer window. They've basically lost, I think, 3 of their top scorers have gone. And so they're in a bit of turmoil. They've added some, obviously, more players to fill those gaps. But what were you thinking about Burton? What were you told this morning from your friend in Burton?
Yeah, Colston Crawford. That's his name.
Nice.
I spoke to. Very old school. That'd definitely be a good detective name, maybe. But no, yeah, they've had a very transitional transfer window. A lot of their players have left. Like Lucas Atkins, is a club legend. He's joined Mansfield. Linking up with Nigel Clough. He's always a player, always look out for when you play Burton. He's always that big striker, isn't he? Although he plays fullback sometimes as well. But they've got 2 rookies up front. One who's formerly of Norwich. So boo, all that jazz. But they got, of course, a massive win on Tuesday night, beating Bolton 3-1. Of course, Bolton using the cliche, the pitch was rubbish, so we couldn't play our football. But I think it was a beating a form side. But no, I think Burton are going to be a tough nut to crack. I think they're going to be a team who are going to be coming to Portland Road, we are the bogey side. That's what he said, Burton Albion for us. When they come, we normally beat them. So normally for Burton, it's a bogey side. So no, a lot of good stuff from the Oppo. I'm not really saying the right things right now, but watch it and you find out.
Rossi not really saying the right things in the right order, but definitely watch the video when it comes out. Stewie, this is the start of a big weekend or a big few days for Town. Burton at home, Cheltenham at home. Real chance to make it a moving day, as they say in golf. Get 6 points and put even more pressure on the sides above them. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, Ipswich have got to win at least half of their remaining 14 games, probably more. In reality, it's going to lead probably 8 or 9, and you have to peg down Burton at home as one of those wins, realistically. But Burton, I would describe them a bit like Accrington as just being an awkward team to play. They make it a game of chaos. They swamp you. They just stick the ball repeatedly on top of you and hope that eventually you make a mistake. Ipswich obviously lost the reverse fixture earlier in the season. As Ross says, I looked at their team from the weekend and it's barely recognisable from the first fixture. So yeah, interested by this one. Ipswich managed to sort of sidestep a couple of banana skins against Gillingham and Doncaster, and this you have to say is another one that they need to negotiate.
Right, Hutchie, let's get into the team then, shall we? In terms of the team, the kind of back eight almost picks itself now, doesn't it? Certainly the back four, we know what that will be. If Evans is fit, you'd imagine he's going to come in midfield. You've got Thompson and Burns either side of them. So again, we're back to the same old dance, the front three. Clearly there was a major spanner thrown in at MK Dons with KJ coming from Siberia to start. And McKenna, again, explained very well his thinking on that. So what would you do with that top three? And am I missing anyone anywhere else when I say that the back eight pretty much select themselves?
I don't think so. Evans hopefully could be he was ill at the weekend, so whether he's over that illness or not remains to be seen. That's the one. But I think I'd probably keep at least. I'd probably keep Selena and Chaplin, and I'd think about keeping Caden Jackson in that side, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was maybe one where the striker got changed and go with Bon, maybe someone that's a little bit more of an all-rounder as the striker. But if it came out as an unchanged side, aside from Lee Evans coming back in, I wouldn't be too upset with that at all.
Stewie?
I think there might be the rotation up front again, as well as Jackson sort of help them execute a game plan at MK Dons. This is a different type of game. It's a home game. Burton are a completely different style of opposition to MK Dons. So I'd be surprised if Jackson went again. I think in a game of chaos against Burton, Ipswich might look for a bit of control. Sonny Aluko's been a bit of a forgotten man, surprisingly, of late. I'd like to see him back in the side, just to someone who can put their foot on the ball and get out of, while the game's going at 100 miles an hour. I think he's someone that can help you dictate the pace of the game. So I'd like to see him in, but who he comes in for is another question, isn't it? Connor Chaplin, as his goals are kind of keeping him in the team and his energy as well. But it's impossible to call who's going to start in these games. There's also, you have to take into account that Burton have got a major set piece threat as well, and that's why I think getting Evans back in the side just to add a little bit of extra height would be good. Excuse me, and physicality. And you could argue the same about Norwood or Bon. As much for their defensive work for those set pieces as well as maybe add an attacking threat as well.
Rossi, because it's his 24th birthday today, I want to ask you about Kyle Edwards, who is kind of forgotten man. Earlier in the season, we were all saying how incredible it was that Town have got a player like him in League One. And now it's kind of hard to see where he fits in this side. Is there still a role, do you think, for Kyle Edwards, and where would you play him? I know you're probably the worst person to ask this because you frequently say, I don't care about lineups, it's up to the manager. But what would you say about Kyle Edwards?
I think definitely he still has a role in this team. Dominic Thompson's probably playing in his position, maybe. I think that's where you'd play him, but then he could play on the right as well. It is mad to think we've got a player like Kyle Edwards on the bench, like any other League One team, even probably on Saturday. MK Dons probably thinking, we're now bringing on James Norwood and McCordy Bon. Now thinking, what? And it's like a lot of games, like Wimbledon, when we brought on, I think it was Chaplin came on, wasn't it? Or Selena came on, and you think this is just mad. But I think he's definitely got a role. I think at the moment he may have to be that impact sub, but then we could get surprised by McKenna. He may start out of the blue. So yeah, we shall see.
Okay. Hutchie, you know what time it is? It's time for £1 million picks, baby. What are we doing this week?
Always the same. Hammer on Sam Morsey to score, £50,000 on it, but double it up with an Ipswich win. So Morsey to score anytime, Ipswich to win, 50 grand returns £400,000.
And how are we doing? We won big, didn't we? We won big, didn't we, the weekend? Or was that the week before?
No, we did not. We lost medium. So we're down to around like 850 grand, something like that.
Rubbish. So
arguably, this whole thing is completely pointless. But we'll keep going to the end of the season at least.
I mean, when you really think about it, life as a whole,
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we have that chat? No, let's not. Right then. So you're saying Morsey to score, Town to win. Give me a prediction, Hutchie. What are you saying?
2-1.
2-1 Town. Rossi.
I'll mute myself. 1-0 to the Tractor Boys, baby. Clean sheet.
2-1, 1-0. Stewie, you saying a win?
Yeah, got to, haven't I? 2-1
No.
as well.
You don't have to.
I don't have to, but I want to, and I will do. Like Andy, 2-1.
2-2-1 to 1-0, and obviously I'm saying 7-0. So there we go. Everyone's saying that Town are going to win this weekend.
One day it will come off.
Before we take our lead, boys, any other business, anything to bring up, anything I've not talked about, anything you want to get off your chest before we leave? Stu looks like he's about to die. Coughing away. Hutchie, anything to add?
No other business.
Rossi.
No business.
Oh, we should mention, of course, when I talk about all these podcasts we're putting out this week, pumping out free of charge to you, the KOA Army. Tractor Girls Talk is out there now for people to listen to. And also you're doing a fan social this evening, which will go out tomorrow, Friday. Who's on the fan social this week?
Good old John Watson, Ben Diaz, and the Sweet Welsh Prince, Harvey Davis, will be on.
There we go. Get his thoughts on being taken away from the friend of the show list. That's
No. Let's not rewrite what was said.
Stewie, have you got anything to say, or can you say anything?
No, I'm just quietly dying here.
Excellent, lovely, just like the show. Right then, boys, that's wrapped up for this week. Please support our sponsor, Manscaped. Use the code KOA to get 20% off and free delivery on all their excellent clobber at manscaped.com. Also support us on social media by following us across all social medias, Kings of Anger on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, because that helps us visibility-wise in the charts, helps more people see us, which is great, especially when we've just had something like the big Ashton and McKenna interview. There you go. Hope you've enjoyed all the shows we brought to you this week. Go back and listen to the Ashton McKenna interview if you've not, or even if you have, go back and listen to it a second time, because it's well worth a second listen. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game if you're going, and we'll speak to you again next week.